Stuart Alan Steinberg, and I was in the Army from July the 28th, 1966 until June the 11th, 1971. I'm the Veterans Benefits Coordinator for the National EOD Association, and I do the same kind of a thing for the Oregon State Council of Vietnam Veterans of America. In my second year of law school in 1978, another vet and I, a guy named John Davalewitz, we decided to start a clinical program. We actually organized, set up, wrote a grant, and basically what we did is we did VA claims, we did Social Security disability claims, and we did a lot of discharge upgrade work because a lot of bad paper, a lot of bad discharges were handed out to men and women who served in Vietnam for drug charges, wetting their bed, being gay. And, we also did a lot of, getting vets enrolled for VA healthcare. Anyway, that's how I became an advocate. This is my time in Vietnam, 1968 to 1970. In the Afghanistan tattoo, I had the dragon done, and I didn't finish it because, I wanted to make sure I was going to get back, before I added the dates. Probably the thing that sticks out the most are the relationships that I had then and still have with many of the guys I served with. EOD is explosive ordnance disposal. It's Army fancy talk for the bomb squad. Basically, the mission of EOD is to identify, render safe, and dispose of any type of explosive ordnance. And not just American ordnance, but the ordnance of every nation in the world. It was always kind of known, at least when I was in Vietnam, that there was a bounty on us because what we did basically was disrupt the enemy's actions to kill people. And not just US and Allied soldiers, but, to kill the Vietnamese people, and particularly if they were cooperating in any way with Allied forces. Well, whenever there was a B-52 strike, there were going to be duds. So they would find 500-pounders, 750s, 1,000-pounders, 2,000-pounders, and then they would call us out. So we would air assault in and hump to wherever the site was and blow them the hell up. You couldn't leave them there because the enemy would come in, they would cut these things up into pieces, and then they would steam out the explosives, which either was TNT or RDX or something like that. And then they would turn those into stick grenades, claymores, improvised explosive devices. So every time we took care of something like this, we denied the enemy access to explosives, and we saved lives because they weren't being turned into these things that were killing and maiming not only our own troops, but civilians as well. Paul Duffy and I got this call, and we took off about 7 in the morning. The 101st came to pick us up, and it was about 4 hours after this battle had ended. As we made this really slow turn, overlooking the fire base, you could see the carnage and the destruction. There were rounds all over the place, there were bodies all over the place, and anything that had grown had been burnt to a cinder. As we made that roll and we saw all this, I turned to Paul and I said, man, this is what fucking hell looks like.
Most people probably don't know it, but there's no plating. There's no armor on a helicopter. So it's kind of like riding around in a beer can. So if somebody starts shooting at you, the best thing you can do is shoot back and real fast. I'm Aaron Sutton. I was in the Army, Vietnam, and I was with the 48th Assault Helicopter Battalion. My duties were door gunner. It's kind of like being a target on a helicopter. Your life expectancy isn't very long. It's the thing they usually want to stop on a helicopter is the guns. So that's usually what they shoot at. When those bullets come up there near you, they look huge. Tracer rounds look like basketballs. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life. You can see them down there. They're a quarter mile away and they're shooting at you, and you shoot back, because if you don't, it's going to be the end. I don't know how to tell you about the pressure and the fear, but it's pretty scary. Taking another person's life is probably the hardest thing for me to accept. Watching your fellow Americans die, people that you eat with and sleep in the same tent, and they don't come home at night because they didn't make it back from their helicopter ride.
I remember vividly the day that I got shot. It's crystal clear. We had been out there for an hour or so, and they told us to cut into the tree line. And then when we did, the NVA opened up on us. So we were ambushed. People started dropping. We had people firing weapons everywhere around us. We went through about 700 rounds of ammunition. We ran out. Over there, they bury their dead sitting up, and their graves are all mounded up. And we were in a graveyard. As I jumped behind the grave, I caught a round just above my knee. When it hit, it broke the femur in about 5 places. The bottom of my leg was wagging back and forth. The next thing that happened was that the corpsman came over. He gave me a couple of syrettes of morphine and told me I had to get 50 yards back farther on my own. So I said, okay. As I was making my way, I was hit again just below my knee. It was just like then I ran into Nick again, and he was good. He hadn't been hit. He was kind of acting like a cheerleader, so to speak. You know, you're gonna make it. And then that's a really hard part. He got hit, went in his chest. He was laying next to me, and he didn't make it. He didn't make it. To this day, I feel like it was my fault that he was killed. I mean, he was a cheerleader for me, and it got him nothing, you know? I mean, that's a memory that's like always right there. It's right behind my eyes. It's not a good one.
My grandfather was in the military. He was in World War I. My father was a pilot in Korea, shot down. It seemed to fall on me. The rest of the family wasn't as interested as I was. I guess it was my turn.
What was it like being in Vietnam? I was 18 years old, and most all the other guys that were with me were my age, maybe a little bit older. A good portion of them didn't want to be there in the first place. Myself, it was kind of exciting, and all the camaraderie. It was like a sports team, if you will. Actually became probably the ultimate relationship that I've ever had in my life.
I was a prior enlisted guy, and I was an older lieutenant, and the 82nd Airborne had been serving in the Desert Storm, and we got called to go over there and take their mission. what was later to be problematic with the terrorist elements. And I got my first company command while I was there, and it was quite an extraordinary experience.
I joined the military because my family's been in the military, and it's an honor and a pride thing. It was not something that I felt obligated to do. It was just something that I just wanted to do.
I'm from a small town in eastern Oregon called Mount Vernon. I graduated high school and wanted to see the world, and I knew that I couldn't afford college, so I joined the Army.
In 2005, we were deployed to northern Iraq. All we did was, run up and down the road basically as IED magnets, looking for IEDs so the supply convoys could come through and not get hit.
My unit, we were running convoys. My biggest responsibility or fear, I guess, would be the troops and the personnel, because that was, the main goal was to go out and bring them all back. I could care less about the mail or the food. The troops were the important part.
And that was the combat side of things, but on the other side of things, we went out and we, looked for the people setting up the IEDs in the villages, tried to talk with the different mayors, tried to talk with the different locals, try to build a repertoire with them so we could, find these people so we didn't have to get hit every day as, when you left the wire in your Humvee, you weren't, worried about whether or not you were coming back. My first mission out, we were doing our right seat ride. Less than 50 meters from an Iraqi police checkpoint, there's a IED, and that's all we did is we would just sit there and we'd drive and look at the side of the road, just looking to wait, and you can't see them because they're buried in the ground, but you just look for fresh turned earth and something that might seem out of place. And it was a hard thing to start your time off over there and realize that this is what I've got to look for, and you didn't even see it. You're sitting there looking on a gravel road and a gravel side of a road for something that you don't know if it's just somebody kicking rocks over there or if it's an IED.
The routes that we took were hit with IEDs almost daily. We had a fueler get hit. It's called a HEMTT, a heavy expanded mobility tactical truck, a big 8-wheel fuel truck. A piece of shrapnel went right through the cab because it wasn't up armored yet and killed a female soldier. What made it worse is I wasn't there. I took a day off. And she died when I was back.
On February 23rd, March 10th and 11th, and March the 23rd, 1969, the Viet Cong, totally undetected, got into the Quy Nhon ammo dump, which at that time I think was the second largest conventional munitions dump in Vietnam, and blew it up. My team and EOD men from teams all over Vietnam were brought in to start cleaning the dump up. And we went into this pad of 8-inch rounds, which are these huge 64-pound artillery rounds. And we were just looking around, and I happened to look up, and about here, I saw an 81 millimeter mortar round, a US 81 millimeter mortar round, wedged in between two of these 8-inch artillery projectiles. So Roger and I decided, well, we got to get this thing out of here. So my CO and one of the other NCOs in the unit drove up. Captain Lawrence, asked me, what do you propose we do? And I said, well, we bounced it around, it didn't go off, it should be safe to pick up. And I laid out a row of sandbags in the back of the 3/4-ton truck. Everybody else got back. I picked the round up. It's what they paid us that extra $55 a month for. And I said, okay, I'm gonna back it out. I'll drive down there and blow it. So I backed out and took off down the road. I got about 50 feet and I heard this bang. And it was so close that it sounded like it was really far away. This is all happening in the space of seconds. And I thought to myself, bang. And I turned around to look, and of course the round had gone off right over the gas tank. So I see this ball of fire coming at me. Of course, I didn't realize at that point that the doors had been blown off, the windshield had been blown out, and then the blast hit me and blew me out of the truck. And I rolled down over this embankment. Because my eardrums had been perforated from the blast, it was like the ocean was going through my head. It was kind of like picking up a shell on the beach and listening to that wind noise. And as I kind of turned and looked, I could see the truck rolling down the road completely on fire. They were saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And that's really the last thing I remember. I actually went back to work 3 days later. And 3 days after that, I got wounded the second time during an incoming attack. So that's how I got blown up.
When I came home from Vietnam, the next 20 years I spent self-medicating to try to forget the things that I had seen over there. I grew up way too fast, saw way too much.
I'm proud to be a vet. I'm real disappointed at the way the Vietnam vets were treated. The government didn't want them, the people didn't want them, but here we are. When I came back, I was spit on and yelled at and called names. It wasn't too pretty.
I didn't know what to do or where to go. I happened to be in the employment division in Bend one day, and they had a veteran service officer there. He said, "Were you in Vietnam?" And I went, "Well, yeah." He said, "What'd you do over there?" I said, "Well, I was a machine gunner." He started asking me a bunch of questions. Do you have this and do you have that, like symptom-wise? And he gave me this little pamphlet thing, and he said, "I want you to take this home and read it, and then once you read it, have your wife read it." And I said, "Okay." So I read it, and I went, I don't have any of this stuff. My wife read it, and she went, "Ray, you got all this stuff. This is like a blueprint." Symptoms of PTSD. I'm a chronic guy that checks all the locks. I don't go to places where there's huge crowds and hang out in crowds. I sit in the back of restaurants with my back to the wall. I'm always looking around to make sure there's nobody, in a position where they could, take a shot at me.
After being in combat and being shot at, how long does it take you to get over that? I don't think you do. I know with me, I hadn't been home but about a week, and I was at my parents' house. Their stove wasn't working, and they had the oven, and my mother had made something, I don't know. They had a little trailer outside. They put the food in the oven outside in there. I went out to check it for her, and coming back in, of course this is December in Colorado. It's about 3 feet of snow on the ground. And I leave the little trailer, jump back up onto the sidewalk to go in the front door, and a car had gone by, and I apparently backfired, I don't know, but I just dove in the snow. I mean, come on, you're in the United States. You don't have to, but you don't think like that. It's reaction. And I don't know that I've ever got over it. I think you just deal with it.
Injuries from IEDs, the IBA, stuff like that was back injury. I don't have a lower back anymore. Mine's just pretty much destroyed. I have TBI. I get headaches all the time.
I was shot twice, sent home in a body cast, and spent 4.5 months in traction.
Significant hearing loss from IEDs blowing up right beside me. Yeah, I have a cracked vertebrae in my back from just riding in the trucks, jumping in and out of them, putting on all the gear. With all the gear and everything, I'm over 300 pounds, so when you jump off a 6-foot step, it does tend to affect you.
You know, sometimes you'd be on your feet for 15, 16 hours a day with a 200-pound IBA on. That just destroys your back, destroys your body.
Well, for me, it was just bad luck, a bad parachute landing fall. I pulled my toggle a little too soon, tried to flare my chute, and ended up hyperextending my knee and landing on my web gear got wrapped up somehow in my pack tray or tangled up in the weeds on the ground or something. But anyway, I landed on my upright canteen on my lower spine and ended up causing a traumatic spondylolisthesis and then undergoing 3 total spinal reconstructions over the next 3 years trying to get my spine fixed. 6 titanium bolts. It's funny you ask. I happen to have a spare in case I lose one. I had 6 of these and 2 rods that hold my spine together from all the way down the lower part of my spine.
At least probably once a week we would get hit, either a ground attack or most often with rocket attacks and mortars. One assault had and a Chinook got hit with an RPG and killed everybody on board that.
Perforated eardrums, constant tinnitus. I mean, it's happening right now. Hearing loss. I wrecked both of my knees. And the neurologist said to me, man, have you had some trauma to your lower spine at some point in your life? Like maybe a bunch of years ago? And I said, well, I got blown up. And he said, well, that probably did it, because here's what's wrong.
American public, I don't know if they just don't know because they're not educated about what veterans have to deal with the VA. Fighting the VA is like fighting a total different war, only you're fighting from your living room. You're fighting, you know, from the mailbox, you know, from your denials.
When I first came back, I went to the VA and they tried to flood me with drugs, I guess, for lack of better terms. It seemed like the more pills I got, one would counteract the one that I just took. Then I need another one to counteract that one that I just took.
I'd go into the VA and tell them I had an issue or try to explain what my problem was, and they throw pills at it. And that's really been the biggest thing I've seen is it's hit it with a pill and it'll go away.
They were psych meds, and then there were meds to help me to sleep. And I think they even tried to give me a med to have me quit dreaming, which I didn't know there was such a thing, and it fucked me up all kinds of good. I think I was in The Wizard of Oz and I saw a bunch of shit I didn't even know existed, so I quit taking them altogether.
When I first applied to the VA and I first got my first comp and pen denial, I felt dishonored. I felt let down, I think, more than anything. You know, I did all this stuff for you guys. I mean, and you guys can't do, something for me.
The system is set up, the red tape, the bureaucracy is there for a reason. They want you to fill out the forms. They want you to check your mail every single day for a year. Then you get that letter, oh, you didn't put this in. So you got to send that in. Well, it's going to take a couple of weeks to get there, another 6 months before somebody sees it, and then you'll get another letter. Oh, you didn't cross this T.
When I first got out of the Army and realized that I had a hearing problem, they didn't want to deal with me at all. They just shuffle you around.
Well, it was very frustrating, of course. All the paperwork wasn't being read, that they just kind of scanned it and made a ratings decision. We had to come in and continuously show them what was overlooked so I would get a proper rating.
It's just a big paperwork chase from one end to the other that people are constantly, fighting. And if it wasn't for, a certain individual, I would have probably just given up.
Doing the claims and everything with the VA, I call that PTSD type 2. I always figured that the goal of the VA was to frustrate me enough so that I would either go away or die. I went away on several occasions in the midst of working with Stu, as a matter of fact, but Stu brought me back. No
one told me disability benefits, didn't know anything about them until Stu Steinberg, he said, we've got to get you your benefits, and so he made my claim. It took about 2 years And again, if I hadn't had Stu Steinberg as my advocate, if I left it up to a county group for a year, they didn't do anything. Stu's took it over, filed my claim. Immediately I got service connected for the type 2 diabetes. What's of more significance is we made a claim for PTSD.
Stuart Steinberg helped me file for PTSD. He's the first one that recognized I had an issue. He helped me file a claim. He helped me find a doctor that could start treating me, and has really helped me. If it wasn't for Stuart, I wouldn't be here today.
Right now, I have claims pending probably in 20 regions, maybe around the United States, between 80 and 100 cases. My problem with the VA system is more focused on the claims problems. Usually when I'm filing a claim, there are multiple claims. And I usually win most of them in the initial go-around. But if I think the rating is too low, based on the medical evidence, then I appeal it. And I win most of my regional appeals. So the few cases that I lose in the regional appellate level, I take them up to the Board of Veterans' Appeals. And if I lose there, then I try to find a lawyer and go to the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. Now, I've only had one case. That was Ray Jones. I've had one case that went up to the Court of Appeals, and we won it there.
I was down by the old mill district in Bend walking my dogs. My cell phone rang. It's hard. It's a happy occasion. It's hard to talk about it. She called me. She said, she told me her name. She said, and we won. And I went, no way. Well, sorry. They re-rated me from 2011 back to 1980. So that's a long time. And the reason was because Stu was bulldog enough to hang on to it.
Basically what happened was the lawyers for the VA walked into the conference with the judge and basically said, yeah, this guy was right back in 2006. So of course they then had to pay Ray all this money. It was a complete waste of time. My time, the court's time, and all of these other VA agencies that said I was wrong the very first time. A lot of times what happens is when I lose a claim at the initial go-round, it's lost because there hasn't been a really comprehensive review of the veterans' records. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that these people doing these claims, the ratings, are just overwhelmed. And it's gotten so bad that most of them now are required to do a minimum of 20 hours of overtime a month. So here's what I don't understand. Instead of paying these people who are already making $70,000 or $80,000 or $90,000 a year more money to work overtime, why don't they take that overtime money and hire more people to do claims, preferably all of these unemployed veterans I keep hearing about? This seems like a simple solution to me.
There's not enough people working in the Veterans Administration. That they just said, last year there were 1 million claims behind. 1 million. How do you catch up on 1 million claims? People are dying waiting to get to see the VA. If they would have done everything that I thought that I should have done for me when I first came back, with handling my PTSD and my anger issues and that, I'd probably be living a happy family life right now instead of a divorced, broken family life.
Life would be different if I would have got compensation right away without having to struggle for it, as I wouldn't be buried in debt, number one, from trying to, not being able to work and not being able to take care of myself.
It would have been invaluable to have that available to us, because I would have been a different guy. I wouldn't have been as much of a wreck personally, mentally, if I'd have had all of that treatment and everything 30 years earlier. if we would have been able to come home and have somebody to go, hey, you know, you need to go see this guy, you need to go do that.
Well, I think to make things better for the vets, they need more people trained in diagnosing issues and problems that the combat vets are going to have when they're so messed up. To me, the vets are they're kind of taking it in the shorts. You know, they go defend our country and put their life on the line, and then they come back and they're expected to just jump back into the flow of life, and it isn't going to happen. They need some help.
Family, you're not tested. Over there, every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you know, you survive because you've got 180 degrees of your buddy's back, and he's got 180 degrees of your back. It is the ultimate relationship. It was hard to leave and go home.
I mean, how many more divorced soldiers do you need, or how many more suicides do you need before somebody can help us out?
Suicide's only crossed my mind once. Suicide is, my opinion, is the coward's way out. So what brings a man that doesn't believe in cowardice to take that way out? He's got to be really messed up. It's not tolerable. 22, 23 kids a day killing themselves. I mean, just look at the sheer numbers of people that went, and look at the sheer numbers of suicides we're having. You know, I remember having a suicide epidemic in Hawaii. Nobody could figure it out. All these kids were jumping off the lanais. They couldn't figure out why these kids were so depressed in Hawaii. Now, this is in the late 80s, early 90s. And officers had to be walking the floors to make sure the kids wouldn't jump off the lanais and kill themselves. The damnedest thing I ever heard of. They put barbed wire up to keep the kids from jumping off. The case de resistance was the soldier waited for the chief of staff of the division to come home from church with his wife and swan dived in front of the chief of staff of the division. The reason I bring that up, there's something wrong here, right? I mean, the mathematics of this says there's something wrong. We got to do something. Right now, today, we're at that point again. There's something wrong. It isn't having people hold other people's hands. It's helping people get the education. It's helping people get the resources they need to be able to survive under the mental circumstances and the stress and strain that they come back with. The divorce rate's the highest in our history. Why? Why are officers divorcing their wives at such a high rate? It used to be just an NCO thing. Now the officers are higher than the enlisted. Is it stress for the family? Oh, how could it possibly be? We have family support groups, right? Everybody's fine. The reason is that once the party's over, once everybody's patted on the back, given their decal, given their sticker, and everybody gets their happy-go-lucky medal, whatever that might be, depending on what rank they are, everybody gets sent home. Everything's fine for 3 weeks, and guess what? Now we get to face reality. Mom no longer recognizes Dad. Dad doesn't understand these unruly kids that can't seem to do a PCI for hell because they don't follow instructions. They don't follow instructions because Dad ain't been around a long time. And who the heck's this guy yelling at me? And Mom's running the whole show by herself and really doesn't need an outsider helping out. Next thing you know, they're getting a divorce. I know because it happened to me. My second wife, she said, the longest you've been at home without leaving for the first 4 years of our marriage is 3 months. It's hard. It's hard to stay married to anybody, have a useful relationship when you're never home.
I'm 64 years old. I've been married 5 times. The best and most fulfilling relationships that I've had in my whole life were when I was 18 and 19 years old, when I was overseas in Vietnam.
And people don't, my family doesn't understand. My fiance at the time actually told me that I gave her PTSD. And she was right. I feel that the VA, and I want to use this term loosely, is responsible for people committing suicide, for people getting divorced, for people dying not to be able to see them because you have to wait so fucking long to get in. We want help now. And we want to see a doctor today or tomorrow, not 2 or 3 months from now. And that is the reason why guys are committing suicide. That's the reason that the other half of the veterans that are getting out aren't even trying. And they know that it's going to be years before you'll even see anything.
I was headed down a real dark trail of depression, and it wasn't looking good. I was getting self-destructive. I had been in the past, tried to take my own life, and the good Lord or somebody was looking out for me because I'm still here. Stuart helped me there. Stu saved my bacon.
I have sent letters to the people in Congress who are responsible for veterans and said to them, here are 6 or 7 things you can do to fix the claims backlog process and to speed up the whole thing. Let me give you an example. When you file a claim, the first thing that happens is you get a letter saying, we got your claim, we have a backlog, it's going to take a while. Okay, no problem. Then the next thing that happens is you get what they call a development letter. It basically says, we're working on your claim, and you've filed claims for this, that, and the other, and we still need I get these letters, and they infuriate me, and here's why. They tell me and my client that they need things that they've already given them. So these letters are not individually based on the veterans whose claim we're talking about, because what do? They pull up this claim, they plug in the veteran's name, they look at a couple of things, they plug those in, then they push a button, and they print out this 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-page letter that, like I just said, half of which is complete bullshit. The problem with the claims backlog itself is that the VA does not have the people it needs to resolve this problem. It is a question of people, period.
There's the most appropriate word is that's bullshit. That's got to stop. That's not what so many thousands of military personnel gave their lives for. That's not what protecting our flag, our country is about.
The VA needs to do a little more to help the vets when they come back from combat, because they're so screwed up. They don't know they have a problem. And there really isn't a lot being done that I can see now. It's getting better with people like Stu. They're making it better, and that's a good deal.
If you're a veteran, you need to get online and go to va.gov. If you scroll through the different pages of the VA's website, you can find out what you're entitled to. I think in every state now, they have a State Department of Veterans Affairs, and every county has a veteran service officer. Go to that person, find out what you're entitled to. And if you think that person knows what they're doing, let them file your claims for you. If you don't think they know what they're doing, you got to find someone like me.
Having a friend in all of that stuff with the VA was the best thing that ever happened to me. I wasn't going in to try to talk to a stranger. I was talking to a brother, number one. He had been there. He had seen the stuff. So having him to walk me through the process and do the things he did was invaluable. Invaluable. Stu Steinberg. The best.